Good afternoon. I'm Ed Wolfe, your Central Kitsap County Commissioner. Going into my third year, hard for me to believe. I'm sure it's hard for a lot of people to believe. My goal today is to show the public at home, and we're meeting our guests, what we're doing in Kitsap County, all the commissioners, not just Central Kitsap Commissioner, but what we're doing to improve the quality of life, in Kitsap County. Today we've got 3-4 community leaders that are going to join me, and we're going to be talking about something critically important. It's Pasture-Only Ferry Day, critically important in my opinion. We're going to be talking about a marine highway, and what does that mean? We're going to talk about the connections to the other side of the pond. What does that mean? How does that work? You're all aware, or most of you are aware, of the recently approved voter measure on passenger-only ferries. We're going to hear about that today. And my goal is to bring to the public, I want our residents to hear why I think it's an exciting time with the passenger-only ferry. Exciting for tourists that will be coming here, exciting for residents, individuals, and exciting for businesses. So stay with me, stay tuned. We'll be back very shortly, and I look forward to you meeting my guests. Welcome back. We're on the Carlisle II, sitting in the Port Orchard Marina. I can inform you that the Rich Passage passenger-only ferry today is in Port Townsend, getting spiffied up for a run, I believe, July 10th. But today we're in the Carlisle, and I've got with me 3 or 4 people that are very much community leaders and were involved and continue to be involved in the passenger-only ferry. As I said earlier, this is Passenger-Only Ferry Day. And the viewers at home, I want you to understand and hear why I think this passenger-only ferry is going to improve the quality of life for all of us, many of the residents here in Kitsap County. But before we dive in, let's talk about my guest. Let's start here with, of course I know you all, but let's have me, if you would, introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about yourself. And number one, and number two, how'd you get involved with passenger-only ferries? Yeah, let's start with you.
Sure, I'm Steve Sego, and along with my colleagues on the left here, Jon and Wes will introduce themselves. We were the Fast Ferry team. We got involved a couple of years ago when we saw the opportunity to support in the community the Fast Ferry project. And we watched from a distance for a little while as Kitsap Transit worked to put this together. And we decided to dive in with both hands and feet, got ourselves wet, and helped pass the Fast Ferry with the voters in November. Okay. So I was the co-chairman along with these 2 gentlemen of the Fast Ferry campaign.
These two gentlemen?
These 2 gentlemen.
So
yes.
What do you do here in Kitsap County? I
mean,
you're not working every day on a passenger-only ferry program.
Well, it seems like it sometimes, but it's a passion. It's a commitment. I understand and recognize the value and the benefit to my businesses here in Kitsap. I have a restoration and mitigation banking company. I do work in the region and up north in Alaska. I own a small business here, a restaurant in Port Orchard. I'm involved in
the name
other.
Of that restaurant is
the Dock Bar and Eatery in downtown Port Orchard, and I also am involved in a number of other projects in Kitsap County from north to south, helping to facilitate economic opportunity for our residents here in Kitsap.
And grew up in Kitsap County.
I'm born and raised here. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
I used to commute on the ferry to University of Washington from Bremerton when I was a youngster.
That was a long time ago, was it?
A little too long ago. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
John, tell the public at home who you are and what brings you here and what do you do?
I'm Jon Rose. I'm the president of Olympic Property Group. We're the real estate arm of longtime timberland manager Pope Resources. And that company is the largest landowner in Kitsap County, and it makes us interested in all things Kitsap throughout the county.
How many acres are we talking about?
In Kitsap, we own about 20,000 acres. Yeah, and every one of them is amazing. There's not one bad acre. And so I've got a natural affinity for anything that helps lift all the boats in Kitsap County. We try to be very involved with the issues that really matter, where we think we can be helpful. And then I got involved specifically with this because Steve Sego told me I was going to be involved, and so I just did it. And it was really a great effort. It was great to see Kitsap County and the residents vote to put a little tax on themselves to help themselves and do some investment in their own community. And I think it's going to pay dividends. and I think it's arriving just in the nick of time in terms of our region, and a way to have this whole entire region grow with a little bit more grace.
Jon, could you expand on just in the nick of time? Why
Well, I was just in Seattle today. There are 68 new buildings being built in Seattle right now. That's more buildings than New York and LA put together. And they probably have the last 68 building sites in downtown Seattle. So the cost of housing in downtown Seattle is now going to be a throttle on our attractiveness to new corporate entities coming in. The traffic congestion, it's the livability in Seattle is going to be very, very challenging over the next few years, especially with lots of the new construction projects. And having a valve for that to allow Seattle to continue to attract investment and new corporate players from around the world, it's really important that there's a way for it to grow a little bit more gracefully.
And as your Central Kitsap Commissioner, I'm going to say we have to manage that growth very, very carefully, because I know my wife and I moved over here 20 years ago because of what we have. I mean, look around outside with the water and the mountains. We've got to manage that growth very carefully.
We do, and we see lots of examples of unplanned, unmanaged growth from the old days. But the reality is this county has invested dearly in preparing comprehensive plans to have really coherent strategies for populating our cities and our urban areas first. And we're ready for this. 15 years ago we might not have been ready, but
Good
we're ready
segue.
today.
We're ready for this.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Wes. You want to tell us, Wes, who you are and what you do and how did you get involved in this?
Sure. I'm Wes Larson. I'm president of Sound West Group, and I'm proud to say I'm a fourth generation Kitsap County resident. And I had known Steve Sego for a while, but we actually go back to high school together, both alums of Central Kitsap High School. Sound West Group is engaged in development and construction of a variety of different properties throughout Kitsap County, from Bainbridge Island to Paulsbo to Silverdale to Bremerton. And we are focused right now on leasing up our current project, which is Spyglass Hill, which is in downtown Bremerton. And Spyglass Hill was a forward-thinking project for Bremerton. We've built high-end apartments, and those apartments are being leased up at a record rate. I think we've leased up 77% of the units in a month. So there's a great demand for housing, and it's largely from Kitsap County. As Jon was talking about the need to have good managed smart growth, we need to take advantage of the cities that we have in our community and revitalize those cities. Bring a lot of our old buildings back to life, and we're working really hard to do that with Sound West Group, from the Roxy Theater to projects like Spyglass Hill. Really, in terms of our projects, we're focusing on transit-oriented development, and ferries are a big part of that. Connecting to Seattle is huge. Seattle had the #1 or the fastest growing job market in the country. Actually, the fastest growing job market in 2017, Forbes magazine, and continues to grow at a record clip. So there's a great demand, I think, on this side to access those jobs, educational opportunities, and Fast Ferry is a great way to get us there and allow us to leverage our talent and be able to take advantage and capitalize on the jobs and income and investment that will come from Seattle and being part of the greatest, fastest growing region really in the United States.
So I'll point out to the public at home that we have a couple of homegrown men here, homegrown boys. I think you grew up near the Norm Dix Government Center, didn't you, Wes? And also lived off of Silverdale Way in Central Kitsap.
Yeah, I was actually born in downtown Bremerton. My great-grandfather was mayor back in 1915, and that was the time when the ferry dock was first constructed during the First World War. And then we moved out to Silverdale, so right where the Kitsap or community center is, the YMCA campus, we had a farm. So grew up out there.
But we're going to get into some meat and some substance of the passenger-only ferry and how we got here and where we went and where we're going with the passenger-only ferry. I think Mr. Clauson will probably talk about that. Tell us about you, Mr. Clauson.
Well, I'm proud to say that I'm also a lifelong resident of Kitsap County, and I too were born in Bremerton and grew up here in the South Kitsap area, so I've been around for quite a while. But currently, I'm the executive director of Kitsap Transit, and we're the agency that is now tasked with pulling all these pieces together and getting this passenger ferry program up and operating, and we're excited about it, and I can gladly say that everything is going right as planned, so we're pretty excited about it.
Going right as planned. Talk to the public at home, if you would, John, about you've been with transit for how many years? 30 years?
Yeah, over 30 years,
Over 30
33 years, I think.
Who's counting? But
Yeah,
over 30
exactly.
years.
I lost count at 30.
Talk to us, if you would, or to the public at home about why this has worked this time. This being the passenger-only ferry measure that was passed recently. Why has it worked this time and not a time or two before?
Well, I think there's a number of things that contributed to the success of this particular plan. I think one very large aspect of it is that we've been able to demonstrate that we can operate high speed through Rich Passage without damaging the beaches. That was a big unanswered question in the previous attempts putting a passenger ferry program together. So I think that's a big key part of it. I think the way that we collectively approached this, we made sure that the community was aware of what it was that we were proposing and why.
Excellent job on outreach, by the way.
Well,
the best I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Kitsap Transit, yeah.
Thank you. But we also did a lot of outreach in the plan development portion of it as well. So we made sure that the plan was responding to what the community wanted. And then I think the other big help was these three gentlemen to really get behind it and help us get the information out to the community. So when it came time to voting on it, they were informed. They knew what they were voting on.
And I might add that these three gentlemen, as you refer to them, they weren't the only ones on this team, but these were three critically important individuals, I think, that worked on the program.
That's absolutely correct, and these gentlemen could explain that better, but these three were kind of the real movers and shakers, if you will, the ones that really pushed hard.
Yeah.
But it was a large group of folks that came together to
Yeah.
help pull that campaign together.
John, can you give us, before we go to the others, can you give us your thoughts about data and research regarding the demand for a passenger-only ferry?
Well, we always knew that there was demand. In fact, you could go back to looking in the years that Washington State Ferries operated just out of Bremerton. They were operating 350 passenger vessels, and there were sailings during the commute period that they were absolutely full, and they left people behind. So we knew that the demand was there, and we did a lot of work to validate that demand. And we were able to validate that, certainly out of Bremerton is a great demand. Kingston, there's a huge demand there as well. And even Southworth has a rather large potential for demand. And although that's third in ridership in the plan, it is still sufficient that we believe that it justified an operation.
Okay. I'm going to open this up now to our other colleagues. Or anyone that wants to answer, feel free. One, what, in a nutshell, are the benefits to Kitsap County residents with regard to our new passenger-only ferry? And by that I mean economically, socially, culturally, anything you can think of. Let's start with you, Wes. What are the benefits to Kitsap residents as you see them?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the outset, the access to jobs, the inbound access to investment from the greater Seattle region, and educational opportunities and entertainment opportunities, Mariners games, Seahawk games, etc. But maybe one of the most underestimated impacts, I think, is going to be coming from tourism. The Washington State Ferries are already the #1 tourist attraction in Washington State. What I think a lot of people don't realize is the scale of the improvements that are going in on the Seattle waterfront. You've got a $1 billion plus waterfront improvement. There'll be promenade. There'll be all kinds of restaurants, retail. I hear the Seattle Aquarium is building an outdoor shark tank, and so there's just an amazing array of opportunities there. And I think you're going to see a lot of tourists gravitating towards that more so than in the past. And I think there's an opportunity there for Kitsap County to attract a large share of those tourists who would probably think of nothing better to do than spend 30 minutes taking a boat to one of our communities and the gems of the West Puget Sound. So I think that the opportunities are just going to be there'll be a cavalcade of opportunities, and I think those are really beyond what we can estimate right now. But being a part of a region, the largest growing, fastest growing region in the country, and one of the fastest growing in the world. When I represented Kitsap Economic Development Alliance in China recently last year, it was interesting to go from meeting to meeting and hear Seattle spoken of as the up and coming city in the U.S., as the New York City, the future New York City of the United States. So we have to think big, and we have to really capitalize on the opportunity to be part of and the fast ferries, I think, are a perfect way to better access all that opportunity.
How about you, Jon?
Well, I like it for really selfish reasons. This is a great county here, great quality of life. We still have lots of outdoor spaces and human scale cities. But if you want a variety of restaurants, if you want to see amazing theater, and you want to go to museums, and it takes huge populations to support really high quality cultural attractions. And to be able to live here, and for me to be able to hop on a boat and hit any 25 restaurants within a 10-minute walk from downtown and be able to access the theater that happens at night there, that is tremendous. And then when the night is over, I get ferried gently back to my home and kicked off the boat to return to my spot. And that access is worth everything to me. It really is.
A perfect example, last week we were over, my wife and I were over at Key Arena for a concert, and we just didn't make the time right. We had to drive around.
Yep. But tonight, or Friday night, I'm going to walk on the Bainbridge boat, another 30-minute drive. I'll walk 7 minutes, and I'm going to see an amazing jazz band and have an amazing meal, and it's going to be a completely full evening.
Are we invited?
Yes, you're invited to the other restaurant, and I'll meet you there immediately thereafter.
Okay.
No, they wouldn't have me.
Okay, thank
They
you.
wouldn't have me.
How about you, Steve?
Well, I think Jon and Wes hit the key points pretty effectively, and I think about Seattle and those amazing amenities that are there for lifestyle choices and healthcare and education. It makes Seattle our backyard in a sense, or our front yard, but we still can live in this amazing place in Kitsap County and enjoy the amenities and benefits of a truly different pace of life and this incredible waterways that we live around here. But let me put a human face on what they've just described. It's interesting. When we started this campaign, and you mentioned earlier, and Jon touched on the volumes of people who were part of the Fast Ferry campaign. And we started a Facebook page when the campaign began in earnest. And within a few weeks, we had almost 2,500 people liking and connecting and networking and wanting to know how they could help. But what we also found and met were scores of people who already commute to Seattle, whose lives were very complex, but it was their only economic opportunity and choice, and they wanted to live in Kitsap and work there, and they had no home life. They had no family life here. They couldn't coach sports or tuck their kids in bed at night. And that changed.
We can hear you, but we have another passenger ferry coming in, so you might have to speak up.
That's okay. So with that said, the reality is when this passed, and I shared this with the Kitsap Transit board, I read some of these anecdotes, but when we passed the Fast Ferry, when all of us in this community agreed that this made sense and agreed to fund this, there were so many comments and shares and contact from these folks who tearfully, joyously said, I finally get to have a life. I finally get to be a part of my family and my community. I get to volunteer at my kids' school. We've changed the dynamic of how you can live here and still be a part of the Seattle economy in a way that makes you truly part of our community, not just an invisible commuter who sleeps here at night. And that, to me, was worth everything that we did.
We're going to have a lot of people coming over. I think it's just inevitable, as you all addressed. And again, I go back to we need to manage this the right way, because I'm out there. I know there are 3 boaters here. I'm out there kayaking. We're out there hiking around it. We don't want to ruin this quality of life, and I'll keep coming back to that. And we won't, but we have to manage that very well. Question for any of you. Yes, good for the housing market over here, Passionelli Ferry. Yes, good for coming back from concerts. Yes, there are a lot of good things that people liked about the Passionelli Ferry. How about the naysayers? And I respect the naysayers too. What is this going to do for me? For example, the people that might have doctor's appointments. Maybe you could give us, from that vantage point, not just from new apartments or from new houses, but from those that won't be going over as regularly. Why is this good for them?
So I'll start and we'll go down this way this time. So when we first began this, and one of the reasons we got involved, and we went to see Kitsap Transit's business plan presented a couple years ago, October, and it was a smaller plan with just commuter hours, and I believed, and others did too, that wasn't going to really grasp the attention and interest and commitment and a tax commitment from Kitsap County. And my focus group was always, what about the guy who lives on the Williams Road and he works at Fred Meyer in
That's
Bremerton?
my point.
Yeah. Why is this good for him? Why would he want to raise his taxes to fund a system that serves commuters going back and forth to Seattle? Well, the truth is, by creating a fully fleshed out system that provides connections not just during commuter hours, but eventually in the evening hours and weekend hours, it gives him an opportunity, or her an opportunity, and their families an opportunity to not do what I have to do with my son when I go to a Mariners game and leave in the bottom of the ninth inning and not see that home run that won the game, or to go to Seattle and be a part of an education infrastructure or healthcare infrastructure. But I'll say this too, this is important from my perspective too, is I was born and raised here like a number of us were, and I love this place. And you know, change is a two-edged sword, as we know. And change in the right way makes sense. Planned, thoughtful change. And here's why. If we use our ports and our marine transportation system, so people aren't cramming on I-5 and Highway 16, because right now people who are working in Seattle are thinking about buying houses all the way to McCormick Woods and commuting. It's now a reality. So if we take people and put them on boats where the marine highway system never has a traffic jam unless there's orca whales that swim by, which is an amenity, not a problem. Yeah,
they were out.
But the point is that we can use our ports, and to Jon's point, using thoughtful planning, and Wes's point, use our existing infrastructure in our urban centers to provide for that structure, that residential, commercial infrastructure to support people who maybe don't even want to own a car and want to work in Seattle at Amazon or Expedia and live in Kingston or Southworth or Bremerton or Port Orchard or wherever, and have a kayak on their back porch and a bicycle, and off they go to the trail system that Jon's helping create up in the north end. So to me, it's not just a focused single service amenity. It truly serves the small businesses like mine here in Kitsap County that are going to benefit from people who make their way over here on a fast ferry, come on this 10-minute run to Port Orchard, and spend a Saturday afternoon with their family, and they're from Germany and Japan and China and all over the world, and they discovered Kitsap without creating a big footprint, just an economic benefit.
Much like they do in Seattle to Bainbridge, Jon.
Exactly.
And that's a half-an-hour run, isn't it? Something like that. Yeah. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so for the naysayers or those who aren't going to be frequent users, and actually some of the naysaying was it's going to stimulate growth. The reality is what's happening in Seattle is going to happen in Seattle, and people are going to come anyways. They're going to be here anyways. It's already happening before the boats. There's more national home builders looking at all parts of Kitsap County because they've just run out of room in Seattle. And so if we don't have an efficient transportation system, then the folks that just live here if we aren't concentrating growth at the ferry nodes, then it's going to spread out all over, and people are going to suffer a reduction in quality of life. That's going to be worse because people will spread all over the county. Now people will be focused on transportation nodes, and we won't blanket the countryside with subdivisions. And so for folks that want to keep it rural, it's going to be easier to keep it rural because the people are coming anyways. People are already going from Seattle and commuting to North Bend. And they'd have been doing it sooner here if there was more awareness, if they knew it is here. But as people and home builders start to see what's over here and that there's still availability, they will come, and they are coming, with or without the boats.
Good point.
You know, and I'd like to add from a transportation perspective, I think this program is going to help reduce some of the demand that we have on our current roads. If you can imagine people that, for example, that live in Kingston, their options are today to drive down to Bainbridge Island to connect with a 30-minute ferry route. That's extra traffic that we're putting on 305 and the network that connects Kingston to Bainbridge Island. With service coming out of Kingston directly, they have obviously a much shorter distance to go, coupled with the fact that a passenger-only program induces more passenger-only arrivals. So, as you know, Commissioner, when we established our fares for the program, we provided some incentives for people to leave their cars at home and ride the buses to the passenger-only ferry. So I think there's going to be added benefits to our transportation network here today.
Before we go to Wes, let me follow up with you, John. I on the board, the Kitsap Transit Board, of course, not of course, but I am, and I'm a resident of Bremerton. So I'm speaking as a resident of Bremerton. What are the opportunities for a foot ferry from Silverdale, my district, to Bremerton to take the passenger-only ferry?
Well, I think there are opportunities, and we're going to continue to study that as an option. That was kind of included, and I think came out of these gentlemen's work when they worked with the community as well. We need to explore that. It's not a lot different than this service that we're here today with that runs between Port Orchard and Bremerton. So why couldn't we have a service that runs from Silverdale to Bremerton?
Thanks, John. Wes?
Yeah, well, the movement of people, goods, and services is a benefit to everybody. It'll have ripple effects. It'll be a multiplier. The guy who decides he wants to start a business in Kitsap because he can enjoy the quality of life over here, the telecommuter, just the opportunity to attract investment in our area. The ferries are our highways. It's infrastructure. If the Democrats and Republicans can agree on anything, it's that we need more and better infrastructure. That's an investment in our region, in our communities, and it's something, frankly, historically we had that. Just like back in the day in Seattle, you had streetcars. Now they're building streetcars again. Okay, we had a ferry system that rival none in the Mosquito fleet. Okay, they weren't hydrofoils, but they were the main connector that got people, goods, and services across the Sound and really connect and allowed the Sound to function as an economic unit. So I think that there will be positive effects for everyone in this, and infrastructure is good, and building the spine, the Sound Transit spine from downtown to the U District, price tag $4 billion. All right, we're talking about a very small number in comparison to that, something in the order of I don't want to misquote what your estimates are, John, but I believe it was in a range of 50 million or 53 million, something in that range. So it's not inexpensive, and I don't mean to underestimate the impact of an additional tax, but I think it's something that's really worthwhile for us all.
And if I could add, one of the things that I shared with the community a lot was that this is Kitsap County's light rail. The only difference is that we don't have to buy it right away. We don't have to lay down tracks. And if the demand shifts, we just turn the wheel. We don't have to rip up tracks and move them. So I think it gives us a lot of flexibility to deal with the growth.
What can we expect during the next month, the next year? What's happening with Kingston? Maybe just give us a rundown what's happening in Southport. Give us a rundown of when we're going to start in Bremerton and move forward that way.
Well, very quickly, the service in Bremerton is scheduled to begin on July 10th, as you mentioned earlier. So we're on track with that to actually get rolling. There's a lot of components to it that's going to be applicable not just to Bremerton, but the other routes as well, and that's things like the reservation system. We've got that very close to being in place. As you know, Commissioner, we've adopted the fare structure, so that's done. So things are moving forward. We're going to be out to bid for vessels here very soon. We have a lot of vessels to buy. We've been working with Washington State Ferries over the arrangements of the use of Southport Dock and potentially Kingston as well. So there's a lot of different components to this, and all of them seem to be moving just really, really well and right on track.
Thank you, major players, in helping us get this measure passed. And I also want to acknowledge at least a couple people, Steve Rice and Judy Minter-Eagleson and others you may want to mention also that were involved in this program, and you guys were the leaders at the top here. But there were other people that contributed a considerable amount, and I want to make sure that we express our appreciation to them too. It's been a good day. It's not raining, and we're in the early part of April, so we're not wearing sunglasses, but it's not raining, so we're pretty happy. So thank you all for being here, and march on.